What if Wednesday Addams had enrolled at Nevermore Academy in the spring instead of the fall? And what if she and Miss Thornhill met Tyler Galpin at the exact same time? What then? Welcome to another Wednesday What If fanfiction series by the Storyteller. Chapter 1. Wednesday stood on the stage, her hands clasped neatly in front of her, a small, confident smile playing on her lips. She didn't need to hear the announcement to know she'd won her project, a detailed reanimation experiment using flatworms and electrical currents, was far beyond the scope of her middle school curriculum. She had dressed for the occasion too, black dress, white collar crisp and sharp, the picture of a scientific prodigy with a flair for the morbid. But then the words came. And first place goes to Chadley Witherspoon for his project on the magnetic potential of kitchen utensils. There was a pause in the crowd, as if the students couldn't quite believe it either. Then came the clapping. Weak. Unsure. But enough to make her vision narrow. She blinked once. Her smile vanished. Chadley stepped forward, smug and grinning, holding up his cheap aluminum board like a Nobel Prize. His magnets clung to spoons and spatulas with all the ingenuity of a refrigerator door. Wednesday's jaw tightened. "You've got to be kidding," she muttered under her breath. Her eyes flicked to the judging table, where two PTA mothers were still applauding. Of course. Without a word, she turned on her heel and walked off stage. She made her way through the empty back hallway of the gym, toward the janitor's closet. No one noticed her. Everyone was still crowding around Chadley and his magnetic cutlery. She found the closet unlocked, as she suspected. Inside, she gathered a bottle of bleach, some ammonia, an old metal bucket, and a half-used canister of degreaser. She also pocketed a book of matches someone had carelessly left behind. As she carried the items down the hall, she smiled again, though this time it was colder, sharper. If science is no longer about merit, she whispered, then let's see how they handle a real reaction. 10 minutes later, chaos erupted. A thunderous boom echoed from the far side of the gym. Smoke poured from the hallway, setting off the sprinklers above. Students screamed and bolted for the doors as water soaked through poster boards and papier-mâché volcanoes. Teachers shouted, trying to usher everyone out in orderly lines, but it was useless. Desks were overturned, balloons popped, and Chadley fell into a puddle, his magnetic spoons clattering uselessly to the floor. Wednesday stood by the fire exit, watching it all with a detached kind of satisfaction. She didn't laugh or gloat. She simply observed, like a scientist watching her hypothesis unfold with perfect precision. She had no intention of hurting anyone. The chemical combination wasn't lethal, just dramatic. It wasn't even particularly hard to clean up afterward. But the point had been made. Wednesday sat stiffly in the plastic chair across from the principal's desk, her back straight, hands folded in her lap, the image of poise, aside from the faint smell of bleach clinging to her clothes. Outside, fire alarms still blared in the distance. The gym was being ventilated, and parents were arriving early to collect their hysterical children. Principal Harmon stared at her with red, watery eyes. The stress was starting to show, his comb-over hung limp with sprinkler water, and his tie was slightly askew. "You can't just blow up the science fair because you didn't win, Wednesday," he barked, slamming his palm on the desk for emphasis. Wednesday didn't flinch. Her voice was cool and even. "I didn't blow it up because I didn't win. I blew it up because mediocrity was rewarded. That's far more concerning." "You're 15 years old," he snapped. "You created a chemical explosion because a boy with magnets got a blue ribbon." "Incorrect," she replied. "I created a reaction. A memorable one. Unlike Chadley's magnetic spoons, which I'm sure will be forgotten before lunchtime." Principal Harmon leaned back in his chair, exasperated, and let out a dry laugh that lacked any humor. "You're a psychopath," he muttered, shaking his head. "You're not some misunderstood genius. You're dangerous." That word, psychopath, hung in the air like smoke. Wednesday blinked once slowly as though mildly amused. "On the contrary, Psychopathy implies impulsive, erratic behavior. What I did was calculated, controlled, efficient. If anything, I'd call it elegant. Elegant, he repeated, incredulous. You endangered an entire gym full of students. No one was harmed, she said. And judging by the response, I'd say they were more awake than they've been all semester. He stood abruptly, throwing his hands in the air. You need help. Serious help. I'm contacting your parents, and God help us, I'm recommending immediate expulsion. Wednesday rose to her feet calmly. I was hoping you'd say that. This place lacks vision. And with that, she turned and walked out of the office, leaving Principal Harmon sputtering behind her. Wednesday was silent when she found out her parents had enrolled her at their alma mater, Nevermore Academy. Her lips pressed into a thin line, betraying nothing. But inside, she simmered. She'd barely finished incinerating her middle school gym, and now she was being shipped off to some gothic boarding school full of outcasts and misfits her parents considered home. The snow had only just begun to melt. Slushy puddles painted the cobblestone roads leading up to the iron gates of Nevermore Academy, where students, new and returning, gathered in thick coats and boots, buzzing with excitement over the spring semester. An antique black 1950 Buick Roadmaster hearse pulled up slowly, engine humming like a beast from another era. Its chrome details gleamed despite the overcast sky. Everyone turned at the sound of the heavy engine, their conversations dying in the misty air. The back door creaked open. Wednesday Addams stepped out, calm and composed. Her pale porcelain skin caught the gray light. Her black hair was parted neatly down the middle, braided into two tight pigtails that fell over her shoulders. Her bangs, sharp and even, framed her haunting black eyes, the kind of eyes that didn't look at you, but through you. She wore a long-sleeved black dress, high-collared and adorned with a tiny silver skull and X insignia on the chest. Black stockings clung to her legs, ending in double-strap Mary Jane heels that clicked ominously on the stone pavement. Her fingernails were painted obsidian black, short, precise, and deliberate. A group of freshmen had been chattering nearby. Enid Sinclair, bubbly, curly-haired, and practically vibrating with excitement, was introducing herself to a few others: Bianca, Xavier, Ajax, Yoko, Barkley, and Thorpe. But as the Addams family approached, their words trailed off, replaced by hushed stares. Who's the goth girl from a haunted dollhouse? Ajax whispered. Bianca raised a brow, her arms crossed. She looks like she hexes people for fun. Or breakfast, Xavier added dryly. Eden's eyes widened with fascination. She's so cool. Everyone parted instinctively as Morticia and Gomez flanked their daughter, sweeping toward the main entrance like royalty from a darker, stranger kingdom. Morticia glided with elegance, her black dress fluttering behind her. Gomez grinned broadly, proud and oblivious to the stares. And Wednesday said nothing. She didn't need to. They made their way up the steps and into the principal's office without a single word to the students. Back outside, Eden turned back to the others, eyes sparkling. I have to know her name. She looks like someone who's already cursed this place, Barkley said. Eden grinned. I think she's going to make this semester very interesting. Word traveled fast at Nevermore. By the time Morticia, Gomez, and Wednesday made it through the gates, half the freshman class had already heard. The new girl blew up her old school's gymnasium. Snow clung to the edges of the cobblestones as the spring semester began. Inside Ophelia Hall, students bustled up and down the halls, dragging suitcases, unpacking trunks, and staking their claim on bunk beds and vanity mirrors. In room 2B, Enid Sinclair was halfway through organizing her color-coded journal shelf when the dorm door creaked open behind her. She turned, beaming, then froze. Principal Weems entered with Morticia and Gomez, and behind them stood Wednesday Addams, pale as the moon and dressed in a jet-black long-sleeve dress stitched with tiny skulls in the pattern of an X. Her black pigtail braids framed a face as still as carved stone, bangs sharp and severe. Black stockings. Black Mary Janes. Black nails. She looked like a monochrome photograph come to life. Miss Thornhill followed in after them, overly chipper. Welcome to Ophelia Hall. This is your shared dorm. I'm Miss Thornhill, your dorm mom. I'm sure you girls will get along splendidly. Eden slowly turned around to look at Wednesday. Hi. I'm Enid Sinclair. Wednesday blinked. Miss Thornhill clapped her hands. Just a few house rules before I leave you to unpack. No boys in the dorms after 7, and everyone's expected to observe the 7:30 p.m. curfew. A sharp, dry scoff came from Wednesday. Morticia stepped in smoothly. Wednesday doesn't do curfews. She naturally retires at 11:30. Maybe midnight. Gomez grinned. She gets it from me. Principal Weems's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. This is a school, not a haunted manor. The curfew is for everyone. We're going to have a problem, Wednesday said flatly, locking eyes with the principal. Miss Thornhill gave a nervous laugh. Well, I'm sure we can work together and straighten things out. Morticia's hand hovered inches above her daughter's head, never touching. That won't be necessary. Gomez patted Thornhill on the back. Try caging a scorpion. See how long you last. After the Addamses left, Eden turned to Wednesday. So, you really blew up your school's gym? I considered detonating the cafeteria too. But I don't believe in overkill on weekdays. Eden blinked. Cool. With no further word, Wednesday unzipped her bag, retrieved a thick roll of black tape, and marked a clean line down the middle of the dorm. One half remained colorful, bright, and lively. The other turned darker with every passing second as Wednesday arranged her books by spine color, all black, placed a taxidermy raven on her shelf, and set up a travel-sized Iron Maiden jewelry box. A disembodied hand crawled out of her suitcase, leapt onto her desk, and began dusting her side. Eden yelped, then laughed in disbelief. You brought a hand? Thing, Wednesday said. He's family. Out in the hallway, the door stood wide open and other girls peeked in as they passed by Bianca, Yoko, Enid. Even Xavier leaned in briefly. Is that the girl who blew up her middle school? Yoko whispered. Totally. Look, she has a spider hand, Enid muttered. As the first raindrops began to fall, Wednesday opened the window just a crack, then sat by it with her cello. Eden watched as she began to play Coldplay's The Scientist. The notes carried through the air like morning doves. Everyone in the hallway stopped talking. The cello wept through the rain. The shadows in the room lengthened. And Eden, still standing by her pastel suitcase, whispered, "This is going to be a weird semester." The next morning, Wednesday walked into class wearing her customized, all-black version of Nevermore Academy's uniform. While every other student wore the school's signature black and blueberry blazer and matching plaid, Wednesday's ensemble was completely monochrome, a black blazer with matching pleated skirt, black tie, and black and white Oxfords polished to a mirror sheen. Her presence cast an invisible, but palpable, storm cloud over the classroom. Students subtly scooted their desks a little farther from hers. No one dared speak to her. By the time her third period rolled around, there was a 15-foot radius of silence around her at all times. She didn't seem to mind. In fact, she preferred it. Wednesday breezed through her classes without flinching, answering every question with sharp precision and cold logic. Professors couldn't decide whether to be impressed or unnerved. In fencing class, her instructor raised an eyebrow after watching her duel with Xavier Thorpe. Within seconds, she disarmed him with a swift, calculated move that sent his foil clattering across the floor. Remarkable, the coach said, nodding. You ever considered joining the fencing team? I prefer solitary combat, Wednesday replied, lowering her blade. Later that day, Miss Thornhill beamed in her biology class after Wednesday correctly named every poisonous plant in their identification unit, and added 3 that weren't even in the textbook. My. You've certainly done your homework, Miss Thornhill said. I was bored, Wednesday replied. By the time the last bell rang, most of the students were still recovering from her intensity. Miss Thornhill handed out the homework sheets for the next lesson. Now remember, pages 15 through 25, with notes due Monday. Wednesday stood up calmly, her black leather satchel already slung over her shoulder. Is that all? Miss Thornhill blinked. Yes, but… Before she could finish, Wednesday was already out the door, her heels clicking down the hallway like a ticking clock. Nobody tried to stop her. Nobody dared. Wednesday changed into a black workout top and matching joggers with white stripes down the sides. She threw on a black and white zip-up sweater and laced up her running shoes before slipping out of Nevermore's gates after class. The trail through the woods was familiar now, too familiar. She didn't like it. She needed to see something different. Something real. The town of Jericho sat just beyond the trees, and that morning it felt like it was calling her. Last night's dream clung to her like damp fog. She had been staring into a mirror, but her reflection wasn't her. It was a blonde girl in a white colonial dress, identical face, different soul. The girl had taken her hand and whispered something Wednesday couldn't remember, just before guiding her toward town. But they never made it. Her roommate's loud rushing and slamming drawers had shattered the vision before she could make sense of it. Her grandmother had always told her the Addams blood ran deep in Nevermore's halls, but Wednesday wasn't interested in family history. To her, Nevermore was just another cage dressed up as tradition. And she would find a way out. At the end of her run, she found herself in front of a small cafe called the Weathervane. It looked like every cliché she'd ever avoided, but something about it made her pause. She stepped inside just as a tall boy with curly brown hair and tired green eyes was clocking in. Tyler glanced up and froze. Jesus. He hadn't even heard the bell. She just appeared, standing in all black, expression unreadable. Pretty, in a haunted, cinematic way. Jesus Christ, he said, startled. I need a quad over ice, she said, calm and direct. Sure. You out for a run? I'm comparing the look of the town to the one my friend showed me, she replied. He blinked. You new around here? Not for long. I'm working on a way to escape this educational penitentiary. He tilted his head. That bad? I blew up my middle school. My parents decided a change of scenery was in order. You what? She took a slow breath. I reanimated worms with an electrical current. They gave first place to a boy with a refrigerator magnet. I saw it as justice. He was quiet for a second. Wait, that means you go to Nevermore. Unfortunately so. He nodded slowly, gears turning. There was only one boarding school near Jericho. I'm Tyler. Wednesday. So, you really blew up a school? Just the gym. He handed her the coffee. Well, enjoy the felony roast. She nodded. Thank you. Wednesday walked toward the back booth like she'd been here before. She sipped her coffee slowly, analyzing the interior, the customers, the exits. Her eyes lingered on the brickwork, old, maybe colonial. Then trouble walked in. 3 local boys, too loud, too cocky, too bored, strolled up to her booth. Hey, goth girl, one said, arms folded. Don't mean to cramp your style, but that's our booth. Tyler moved to step in. Guys, maybe chill. I've got it, Wednesday said without looking at him. The boys laughed. You've got it? Look at you. You're tiny. What are you gonna do, write a poem? They didn't see her move. One moment, she was sitting. The next, the ringleader was reeling back, nose bleeding. The second guy lunged, and she grabbed him by the shirt, smashed his head into the table edge, and shoved him backward into the third. She twisted, slammed her knee into the leader's gut, and shoved him to the floor. 3 boys. 15 seconds. And then silence. Wednesday slid back into her seat, hair barely out of place, and took another slow sip. This is very good coffee, she said. Tyler, right? Will you be here tomorrow? Tyler just stared, wide-eyed. Yeah. Same time. She gave a short nod. Excellent. Then she returned to sipping like nothing had happened. The Weathervane's door swung open again, the bell jingling as a woman walked inside the cafe. Her eyes sharpened the moment she saw the wreckage: overturned chairs, bruised egos, and 3 groaning boys nursing injuries. Good heavens, Miss Thornhill breathed, scanning the cafe. What happened here? Wednesday barely looked up from her booth. They seemed to be having fun mopping the floor. Miss Thornhill followed her gaze to the boys. Lucas Walker, the mayor's golden child, was holding a paper towel to his bleeding nose, swearing under his breath. Oh no, she whispered. Realizing what must have happened, she strode over to Wednesday's booth, lowering her voice but keeping the disappointment just loud enough for others to hear. Wednesday, I know this transition hasn't been easy, but you need to make a real effort to be a model student at Nevermore. Tyler stepped out from behind the counter, still unsure whether he was dreaming. With all due respect, they were the ones who came at her. She didn't start it. Miss Thornhill gave him a kind but tight smile before turning back to Wednesday. Wednesday scoffed, eyes as cold as her coffee. Who said I plan to be a model student? That earned a sharp breath from Miss Thornhill, but she composed herself quickly, especially when Lucas groaned louder. Oh dear, she said, bending to check on him. Lucas, are you all right? I'm so sorry about this. Please, let your father know the school will address this. I assure you. Lucas muttered something unintelligible as his friends helped him up. Miss Thornhill turned back to Wednesday with a look that might have passed for sternness if Wednesday had ever respected her. I think an apology is in order, she said. Wednesday stood slowly, gaze fixed on Lucas and his 2 goons. She took 1 step forward. The boys flinched. Call me short and small again, she said coolly, and I promise next time, it won't just be your hand, your arm, or your shoulder. You'll need a room at the hospital with a view. Lucas paled. Miss Thornhill cleared her throat awkwardly. That's not quite what I meant. Without another word, Wednesday headed for the door. Miss Thornhill gave Tyler one last apologetic smile before following. Well, this has been eventful, she said with a soft laugh. Thanks for the coffee. Tyler stood frozen behind the counter, staring at the empty doorway. The only sound was the drip of coffee and the quiet groans of bruised pride. What just happened? He mumbled to no one. Chapter 2. The next morning, Nevermore Academy buzzed with whispers as a black car pulled up the front steps. Mayor Walker stormed through the grand entrance, rage radiating off him. I want to know one thing, he barked to Principal Weems and the assembled students in the foyer. Who the hell beat up my son? Students exchanged glances. Xavier crossed his arms and narrowed his eyes at the mayor. The crowd stiffened as the mayor's voice rose again. I said, who did it? A small hand rose from the back of the group. I did, Wednesday said calmly. Gasps fluttered through the crowd like startled birds. Students parted as Wednesday stepped forward, hands in her pockets, eyes half-lidded and unbothered. She wore her uniform like armor, gothic black and gray against the bright marble floor. Mayor Walker stared, blinking in disbelief. You, he said, looking her over. You did this to my son? Wednesday didn't flinch. Would you like me to demonstrate? Principal Weems quickly ushered everyone into her office. Inside sat Miss Thornhill, Wednesday, and the mayor, who was still red with fury. Now, let's not jump to conclusions, Mayor, Miss Thornhill began smoothly. I'm sure, Wednesday. You didn't see what happened. Wednesday cut her off coldly. Why are you weighing in? Miss Thornhill flinched, her mouth twitching closed. Just ask Tyler, Wednesday added, voice cool as ice. He saw the entire thing. No, he didn't, the mayor said, pointing a finger. He arrived after my son was already on the ground. Wednesday tilted her head slightly and smiled. So, you're relying on the word of 3 boys nursing bruised egos? They could be lying. Maybe someone else beat them up and they picked me to take the fall. After all, I'm from Nevermore, right? The mayor clenched his fists. And from what I heard, she added, stepping forward, Your son has a history of assault. Didn't he and his friends jump one of our students last year? Funny how you weren't this concerned then. Weems shifted uncomfortably behind her desk. You should be glad your son was the one who got hurt this time, Wednesday said. If the roles were reversed, my parents wouldn't just press charges, you might lose your job. The mayor's face turned red. You think your son deserves special treatment because he's your son? Wednesday asked with a raised brow. I wonder how your constituents would feel about that. Silence. Heavy, cold silence. Miss Thornhill's lips pressed into a line. She glanced at Wednesday when no one was looking, her expression slipping into something sharp and disdainful. Weems cleared her throat. Mayor Walker, rest assured, we are handling this internally. Wednesday will be seeing the town therapist, Dr. Kinbot, this afternoon. I'll escort her myself. Walker glared, but said nothing. He turned on his heel and stormed out. After the door shut, Weems looked at Wednesday. Try not to poke the bear next time. Wednesday just shrugged. Maybe the bear shouldn't raise a cub with anger issues. Students whispered among themselves as Principal Weems escorted Wednesday down the hall, murmurs trailing them like shadows. She's going to therapy. She beat up the mayor's kid. I heard she took down 3 guys. It took less than 10 minutes for Wednesday to escape the session. Dr. Kinbot had barely finished introducing herself when Wednesday quietly slipped out the window. She ended up at the weather vane. Her black school uniform looked sharper under the cafe lights, like a crow cutting through fog. As she stepped inside, her eyes narrowed. Miss Thornhill was already there, sitting at a center table with her back to the door. At first, it looked like she was watching Tyler. Or maybe she was just waiting for her coffee. Tyler handed Miss Thornhill a cup, but Wednesday's eyes sharpened when she saw the teacher's hand linger just a little too long over his. Tyler seemed distracted when he finally looked up and saw Wednesday. Same as yesterday? He asked. Wednesday didn't answer right away. Her gaze was fixed on Miss Thornhill, who had finally noticed her. She gave Wednesday a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Polite, pleasant, condescending. Wednesday, on the other hand, looked straight through her. Miss Thornhill walked over, taking a sip of her coffee as if she hadn't been staring Tyler down. How did your session go? She asked in that sing-song tone she used with every student. Wednesday didn't blink. Dr. Kinbot and I agreed to disagree. Mainly, I disagreed with her existence. Miss Thornhill laughed nervously, then lowered her voice. You know, yesterday's incident still has people talking. I know, Wednesday said flatly. People love a good story, especially when they can paint a villain. Tyler, hovering behind the counter, drifted closer, listening. When he finally spoke, it was with hesitation. Miss Thornhill, I saw what happened yesterday, he said. Lucas and his friends started it. But Miss Thornhill brushed him off with a gentle pat on the arm. I'm sure you want to help Tyler, but this is a school matter. Wednesday narrowed her eyes at that interaction too. Then the door opened. Principal Weems stepped inside, her face softening when she spotted Wednesday sitting calmly with her coffee instead of scaling a rooftop or wrestling another student. Wednesday raised her cup slightly in mock salute. I didn't burn anything down. Yet. Weems gave her a look. We're leaving. Tyler leaned toward her. Principal Weems about yesterday. I told you not to waste your breath explaining anything to people who've made up their minds, Wednesday replied. Her voice was cool, but her words were sharp. Weems frowned. You shouldn't be fighting in the first place, Miss Addams. Wednesday stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. And that's why no one remembers who started World War I. Or World War II. No one cares who threw the first punch, only who looked worse at the end. Isn't that right, Principal Weems? Weems didn't answer. Wednesday downed the last of her drink and tossed the empty cup with precision into the trash bin. Let's go, she said. Miss Thornhill watched her walk out the door with Principal Weems, but her eyes didn't carry the same sugary warmth they usually did. Tyler stayed behind the counter, silent, processing everything with a sinking suspicion that Wednesday Addams wasn't just a mystery, she was a fuse already lit. A few weeks later, Coach Vlad practically begged Wednesday to join the fencing team. "It's a regional tournament," he said during class, blocking one of her lunges with a loud clang. "Out of state. Hotel stay. Room service. Free buffet." Wednesday paused, blade still in hand, her expression unreadable. The idea of sleeping in a hotel away from Nevermore sparked something in her, a possibility. A window. An escape route. "I'll consider it," she said coolly, landing a clean hit to his shoulder. "If the room service includes blood pudding." By the time after-school practice rolled around, Wednesday insisted she had to leave at exactly 4 p.m. Something about a vital caffeine requirement. Coach Vlad didn't even argue. He was just grateful she was on the team. Still in her fencing gear, she barely had time to change back into her crisp Nevermore uniform. She slipped into her boots, tugged her braids tighter, and ran to town like a bat set loose from the belfry. She needed her coffee, the kind Tyler made. Sharp, strong, honest. But when she pushed open the door to the weather vane, her boots crunching against the worn floorboards, a different face greeted her behind the counter. "He's off today," the barista said nervously. Wednesday blinked once. Slowly. "Fine," she muttered. "Quad shot. Black. No sugar. No syrup. No artistic liberties." The barista nodded, fumbling at the machine. A few minutes later, she handed over a cup with a hopeful smile. Wednesday took one sip, and her entire expression went flat. Not again. Tyler had always been the one to make Wednesday's coffee. No syrup. No sugar. No nonsense. She came in at the same time every day, rain or shine, always in black, always ordering the same quad shot with clinical precision. Routine suited her. Consistency mattered. And Tyler? He understood that. But today, Tyler wasn't working. The replacement barista, a lanky guy with a forced smile and nervous energy, thought she'd be just as friendly with him. After all, she and Tyler talked often, and she always lingered. Easy customer, right? Wrong. Wednesday took one sip of the drink and paused. Her eyes narrowed, then slowly looked up at the barista like a hawk sizing up prey. Interesting, Wednesday murmured, setting the cup down like it was contaminated. The barista blinked, hopeful. "I've followed the order, quad espresso, no syrup, no. No taste," Wednesday interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's what you served me." He tilted his head in confusion. She leaned in slightly, tone still calm, almost gentle. "Let me clarify. A proper quad should have crema the color of burnt caramel, not this watery beige. It should smell like scorched earth and poor life choices. This smells like indecision." She took one deliberate step closer. "Tell me, do you know the extraction temperature for espresso?" He blinked. 92 to 96 degrees Celsius. Any higher and you scorch the beans. Any lower and you under-extract. This is the latter, generous as that assessment may be. The barista swallowed. "You see," she continued, voice like silk over knives, "when someone asks for no sugar, it's not a suggestion. It's an instruction. You wouldn't hand a diabetic a cupcake." She didn't wait for an answer. "This drink is sweet. Therefore, you either don't know what goes into your own syrups or you've confused espresso with dessert. Either way, it's gross incompetence and a health hazard." He was trembling now. Tyler, watching from the window, originally thought she was just chatting. But then he saw his coworker's face tight, pale, eyes brimming. Shaking, Tyler rushed through the door. "Wednesday." She turned, completely composed. "You will be here tomorrow, yes?" she asked Tyler, not breaking eye contact. It wasn't a request. It was a contract. Tyler nodded, more out of reflex than agreement, and stepped in between them. But the damage was done. Because what Tyler realized in that moment was this. Wednesday Addams didn't need to yell. She could dissect your soul, with a whisper. Tyler suggested they go for a walk, hoping the fresh air would help Wednesday simmer down after emotionally eviscerating his coworker. They walked in silence for a while, the crunch of gravel beneath their shoes the only sound between them. Wednesday's eyes narrowed as she noticed Miss Thornhill lingering near the edge of Town Square, pretending to study a mural. Suspicious. Too suspicious. If this is just aimless wandering, Wednesday said, not breaking stride, then we may as well be ghosts. Wandering without purpose is the first sign of madness. He paused as if he was thinking, cleared his throat. I thought you might like Pilgrim World. She stopped walking. Pilgrim World? As in the glorified roadside attraction with papier-mâché, witch hunters, and aggressively sanitized colonialism. There are some weird artifacts, he said, shrugging. Bizarre enough that they might be up your alley. Wednesday tilted her head slightly, intrigued but unconvinced. Still, she followed. When they reached the park, Tyler seemed distracted, eyes scanning the crowd like he was trying to avoid someone. Wednesday noted it, but didn't say anything yet. The actors in Puritan costumes looked like a cult mid-seance. Wednesday scowled. Religious fanatics in polyester. Charming. Just then, Tyler spotted Lucas Walker and his crew swaggering toward the gates. His posture stiffened. Without warning, he grabbed Wednesday by the wrist and pulled her into the old meeting house. Inside, the scent of dust and lemon polish clung to the air. Artifacts lined the walls, some faux, others simply laughable. Wednesday surveyed the collection with disdain. Is this supposed to be history? These aren't artifacts, they're lies in glass boxes. She chuckled coldly at a plaque describing how the town's founders peacefully negotiated with local tribes. And here I thought fiction was a dying art. Then she stopped. A painting caught her attention, a girl in black, holding a book. Her face eerily familiar. Her eyes, haunted. Wednesday turned slowly. There, in a locked display case, was the book. She leaned in. Same symbols, same cover. Her heart, usually so still, tapped once against her ribs. I bet it's another waste of ink, she said, glancing sideways at Tyler. Only one way to find out. She picked the lock with a bobby pin, opened the book, and grinned when she saw that it was written in Latin. She whispered, finally, something worth stealing. She slid it into her bag. Aren't you going to stop me? Tyler shrugged. Stop what? I didn't see anything. They slipped back into the crowd with casual grace. Wednesday wrinkled her nose as they passed the fudge stand. You know they didn't have fudge in those days, right? That could be, Tyler said. But it's still good. They kept walking. Where do you go on your days off? She asked, watching him from the corner of her eye. Court-mandated therapy. With Dr. Kinbot. What are you in for? She asked, curious. I beat up one of your classmates last year. That's it? Her tone was almost disappointed. Yeah, not as exciting as blowing up a gymnasium, is it? She smirked. No. What was your punishment? Got expelled. Transferred here. Then therapy. Boot camp, he added after a pause. If it's anything like Camp Chippewa, Wednesday said, I understand your pain. I had to commit arson just to get out of there. Tyler stared. You burned down a camp? No. Just the stage, she said, deadpan. They forced me to play Pocahontas. Naturally, the production went up in flames. Tyler barked a laugh, half in awe, half in alarm. Unbeknownst to them, Xavier stood across the street with a few other Nevermore students. He watched Tyler and Wednesday together, their chemistry undeniable. Whispers rippled through the group like wind through dry leaves. Something had shifted. And Xavier didn't like it. Chapter 3. As soon as the bus hissed to a stop in front of Nevermore, Xavier was on his feet. He waited until Wednesday stepped off the bus before falling in stride beside her. You shouldn't be hanging out with him. Wednesday didn't even glance his way. Not this again. I'm serious, Xavier said, cutting in front of her path. Tyler assaulted me. On outreach day. Him and Lucas Walker jumped me behind the weather vane. I know, Wednesday said coolly, brushing past him without hesitation. Xavier blinked. You know. She turned just enough to look at him, her tone void of emotion. Of course. I did my research. It's all there in the police report, assuming one knows how to request public records. Then why are you still talking to him? He asked, incredulous. Trust me, Wednesday. You don't want to be friends with him. She stopped walking. Her stare was sharp, unblinking. Why do you care who I speak to? It's none of your business. Before Xavier could respond, Bianca slid into the conversation like a knife in velvet. He's just trying to look out for a fellow student, Bianca said smoothly. You do well to listen for once, Addams. Wednesday raised an eyebrow. Listening is exactly my strong suit. I just happen to be selective about what's worth hearing. She began walking again, brushing past both of them. Oh, and do give Tyler my regards, she added over her shoulder. If and when he begins to irritate me, I'll bury him 6 feet under like the rest. She disappeared up the stone steps of Ophelia Hall without another word. Later that night, the dorm room was dim, the glow of string lights casting shadows on the walls. Enid sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through her phone. So, she said cautiously, that thing with you and Tyler, was that like a date? Wednesday didn't look up from her typewriter. Absolutely not. Enid raised a brow. You two were seen walking together. I've also stolen a scalpel from a hospital. That doesn't mean I'm in a committed relationship with my surgeon. Enid opened her mouth to reply, then thought better of it. The conversation shifted to upcoming midterms, but Enid kept glancing at Wednesday, who had returned to her reading with unnerving calm. If Wednesday was feeling anything about the earlier confrontation, or her time with Tyler, she was hiding it better than a body in a locked crypt. 2 to 3 days after the midterm essays were handed out, Wednesday walked into class with her stack of papers already in hand. She placed them neatly on Miss Thornhill's desk just as the teacher was about to sit down. Wednesday, I only gave you the prompts yesterday, Miss Thornhill said, blinking. I'm aware, Wednesday replied. The task was embarrassingly simple. Miss Thornhill opened the folder and glanced at the top page. Eden leaned toward her desk mate and whispered, she spent about an hour and a half on each one. Max. Before the class could catch their breath, Miss Thornhill clapped her hands once. All right, surprise quiz. A collective groan rippled through the room. Moans, complaints, and muffled curses followed. Except for Wednesday, who remained perfectly still, her expression blank and unreadable. This is just to help me gauge whether you're actually studying, Miss Thornhill added as she passed out the papers. Think of it as a dry run for the final exam. It was their last class of the day, and everyone reluctantly bent over their desks. Except Wednesday. She immediately began writing, her pen gliding across the page like a scalpel through flesh. Within minutes, she flipped to the last page while most students were still deciphering the first question. Xavier glanced up and watched as Wednesday stood, walked over to Miss Thornhill's desk, and placed the quiz neatly in the corner. Miss Thornhill blinked at the clock. Wednesday, it's barely been 10 minutes. You have the rest of the class to finish. I know, Wednesday said, already walking toward the door. But my coffee run is timed, and you're cutting into it. And just like that, she vanished from the room, her boots clicking against the stone floor. Silence followed. It was always like this during tests. Wednesday would finish first, leave without asking for permission, and somehow still earn perfect marks. Xavier, Bianca, Eden, Yoko, even Ajax, none of them could catch up. They were top students in their own right, but Wednesday was in a different league entirely. Miss Thornhill had once tried to argue about her leaving class early. She remembered Wednesday tilting her head, unfazed. I could stay, Wednesday had said. But I assume you'd prefer that I not sleep in your class. After that, she let her leave. Wednesday arrived at the weather vane just as Tyler was pulling his apron over his head. You're early, he said, surprised. Hey, listen, I'm gonna have to take some time off next week. Midterms, projects, papers, my dad's on my case about my grades slipping. He said it carefully, knowing that disrupting Wednesday's routine was like poking a sleeping viper. She stared at him, unblinking. Keep your shift and I'll tutor you. Tyler blinked. Wait, you'll what? I said I'll tutor you. Her tone didn't change. It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't even generosity. It was a solution. How exactly are you planning to tutor me? I doubt Nevermore and Jericho High offer the same curriculum. What classes? She asked. Advanced algebra, English, Spanish, and history. Her eyes narrowed slightly. How bad are you at studying? He placed a hand over his chest. I'm offended. I'm a solid C student, which means you're one letter away from being a determined failure. Ouch, Tyler said, glancing down, wounded but amused. Give me your address, she said, grabbing her quad-shot espresso from the counter and heading to her usual booth. I'll see you tonight. Tyler stared after her for a moment, baffled. Is this your version of flirting? She didn't even look up as she said no. This is charity. Don't let it go to your head. Wednesday slipped in through the window like a shadow, her black outfit blending into the dark. Tyler nearly fell off his chair. Jesus. You could have used the front door, he said, heart racing. Wednesday landed silently on the carpet. What fun would that be? She wrinkled her nose, surveying the room. You missed a spot, she noted. Looks like you eat where you sleep. Tyler scratched his head. I just cleaned it. My condolences, she said dryly. Tyler sighed. My dad's still mad I didn't take the week off to study. Thought it was irresponsible. You'll earn your week off after I'm done with you, she replied. Now, your midterm papers. Print them. He obeyed, handing over a few pages. Wednesday's expression shifted into one of cold disappointment as she scanned his English essay. You really are one letter away from being a determined failure, she said. Ouch, he muttered again. This is all over the place. You have no central thesis, no direction. You're just rambling in fancy fonts. She sat cross-legged on his bed, pulling the pages toward her like evidence in a crime scene. First rule of writing an essay, have a clear thesis statement. That means you're answering a specific question or arguing a clear point. Everything else should support it, not wander off into irrelevant tangents about the Revolutionary War's vibes. Those vibes were important. Tyler protested. She ignored him. Here's how you fix this, she began, writing on the back of the paper. 1. Introductory paragraph, hook, then thesis statement. 2. 3 body paragraphs, each with a topic sentence that supports the thesis, followed by analysis and evidence. 3. Conclusion. Summarize main points, restate the thesis in a new way, and leave the reader with something to think about. You're not writing poetry. Structure is your friend, she said, handing the page back with red ink slashes and sarcastic comments in the margins. Did you just grade my paper? Tyler asked. You're lucky I didn't burn it, she replied. They worked through his revised essay, then moved on to his history report. Tyler took notes with uncharacteristic discipline. By 11:30, his brain felt like pudding. All right, that's enough damage for one night, Wednesday said, standing up. You don't have work tomorrow, so I'll be back early. We'll cover algebra and Spanish. Seriously? You're coming back. Wednesday was already halfway to the window. Yes, I'm invested now. Like a detective being hooked on a case. Tyler hesitated. Want me to drive you back? She paused. Fine, but drop me near the woods. I don't want to explain to anyone asking whether we were in a date or not. Tyler pulled over and watched as Wednesday stepped into the darkness, melting into the trees like she was born from them. He sat there for a moment, blinking. I think I just got academically mugged, he muttered, shaking his head as he drove off. Tyler returned home from the weather vane balancing a tray of drinks, sandwiches, snacks, and a single-serving dark chocolate cake. Sheriff Galpin raised an eyebrow as his son dumped the food onto the kitchen counter. Planning a picnic? He asked, biting into an apple. No. Just, got a friend coming over. She's helping me study. A friend? the sheriff repeated, looking skeptical. Tyler cleared his throat. She's smart. She's got this whole scary genius thing going on. Sheriff Galpin chuckled. If she can get you to open a book for more than 10 minutes, I owe her dinner. Tyler didn't answer, just waited by the window until his dad finally grabbed his keys and left. A knock on the front door. Not the window this time. Progress. He opened the door. Wednesday stood there in her usual all-black attire, holding a leather-bound notebook like a holy relic. You rang, she said, stepping inside. Upstairs, Wednesday paused in the doorway of Tyler's room. The desk had been cleared. Coffee sat steaming beside neatly arranged snacks. The dark chocolate cake was front and center. You're bribing me with sugar, she said. It's all I can do. You're tutoring me. It felt appropriate. Wednesday examined the spread. Acceptable. They sat down and began with Spanish. Tyler stumbled through the first worksheet. I still can't get when to use ser and estar. Or why everything has a gender. Why is a table feminine? Wednesday looked at him like she was examining a curious fossil. You're trying to memorize rules without understanding the system, she said, tapping her pen against her notebook. Spanish, like many Romance languages, evolved from Latin. It's not random. It's historical structure. She flipped his notebook to a blank page and began to write. Spanish is a Romance language descended from Vulgar Latin, the colloquial Latin spoken by common people across the Roman Empire. Nouns are gendered because Latin had gendered nouns, masculine, feminine, and neuter. Spanish simplified that to just two. Ser is used for permanent states, identity, time, origin. Estar is for temporary conditions, emotions, location, physical states. Think of it this way, she continued. You are Tyler Galpin. That's permanent. Erie's Tyler. But you're tired? Temporary. Estás cansado. Get it wrong and you could accidentally tell someone they permanently embody sleepiness. Tyler blinked. You make this sound like a death sentence. Language is life and death, Wednesday said, sipping her coffee. Say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and you may never be found again. Tyler laughed nervously, still unsure if she was joking. How many languages do you speak? Without missing a beat, Wednesday replied in smooth succession. Je parle couramment le français. Y también hablo español. Ich spreche Deutsch. Parlo anche l'italiano. Lingua mortua est, said Udall. Nup omicron rho nu alpha delta iota alpha beta sigma omega kappa alpha iota epsilon lambda lambda no iota kappa. Tyler's jaw dropped. That's not just being smart, that's borderline terrifying. I consider it self-defense, she replied. They moved on to algebra. Wednesday laid out equations like a chessboard. You don't need to memorize formulas you don't understand, she told him. Mathematics is a language. Understand its logic, and you won't have to rely on guesswork. Instead of drilling him with worksheets, she walked him through a few core examples slowly. She asked questions like, what is the equation actually asking? What's the pattern? Where's the inconsistency? Tyler began to recognize relationships in the numbers rather than blindly plugging into formulas. By 4 p.m., they had finished half of his assignments and clarified weeks of confusion. Tyler leaned back on his bed, genuinely exhausted. I don't think I've ever worked this hard on school stuff, he muttered. You didn't work hard, Wednesday said, gathering her notes. You worked right. There's a difference. She glanced at the dark chocolate cake. I'll take that to go. Midterm swept through Nevermore and Jericho high like a storm cloud. Stress levels skyrocketed, dorm lights glowed late into the night, and caffeine became more valuable than sleep. Eden noticed Wednesday slipping out after hours several times during the week, but she never asked. She assumed Wednesday was off somewhere digging graves or communing with the dead. Still, it was midterm week, and curiosity had a way of lingering. While Eden and a few classmates formed a late-night study group in the common room, Wednesday was elsewhere. On exam day, students shuffled into classrooms with bleary eyes and notebooks clutched like lifelines. The tension was thick. As always, Wednesday finished first. Again. The sharp scrape of her chair against the floor had become the unofficial signal of defeat for the rest of the class. Later that week, when the exam results were posted, no one was surprised. Wednesday Addams had earned perfect scores across every subject. Teachers attached comments like unnervingly brilliant and deeply unsettling, but flawlessly argued. To unwind, students were granted a free day in town. The Weathervane Cafe quickly filled with a mix of Nevermore and Jericho teens, awkwardly civil as they sipped their drinks and pretended not to notice one another. That's when it happened. Tyler greeted Wednesday at the counter with something no one expected, a smile. And then almost a hug. At the very least, something dangerously close to one. "I got your usual," he said, handing her a hot coffee. "It's on the house." They slid into their usual booth near the window, and students inside dropped their straws. Those walking by outside paused to stare. Tyler pulled a few crumpled papers from his bag and laid them on the table, his midterm exams and essays, now marked with solid B's and even a couple A's. "I still can't believe it," he said. "B's and A's. I mean, I'm 2 letters away from being a determined failure." Wednesday raised an eyebrow. "It's sad how proud you are of mediocrity. These questions are child's play." "Which is why you got everything right," he replied with a laugh. Then, glancing at her more seriously, he added, "Thank you, Wednesday." She sipped her coffee without responding. He tilted his head. "What did you get?" "All A's," she said flatly. "Perfect," he grinned. "Then how about we celebrate?" "Spooky dinner. Crackstone's crypt." "8." She stared at him, long and still. Then, without blinking, said, "Sure. Why not?" Across the cafe, Eden, Ajax, Bianca, Yoko, and Xavier exchanged stunned glances. "Wait, did she say yes?" Ajax whispered. "To a date?" Yoko hissed, eyes wide. "She's been tutoring Tyler this whole time?" Bianca muttered, scandalized. "I asked her for help and she said, 'Survival is your own responsibility,'" Eden added, sounding completely betrayed. Just then, the front door chimed. Sheriff Galpin walked in, scanning the cafe until his eyes landed on his son, laughing, relaxed, sitting across from a Nevermore student. His expression shifted into something unreadable as he approached the table, arms crossed. "Tyler, what is this?" Tyler looked up, casually. "Dad, this is my friend Wednesday. She's the one I told you about. The one who's been tutoring me." The sheriff turned to Wednesday, brows raised. "You tutored him? But you two go to different schools." "I went to normie school before I transferred to Nevermore," she said evenly. "Your curriculum is embarrassingly easy." He blinked. "Well, thanks, I guess." I was shocked when he didn't fail. "You're welcome," she replied. Sheriff Galpin gave his son a long look, then nodded and walked away, muttering something under his breath about miracles. As he left, Wednesday's gaze followed him. "He seems nice." Tyler gave a small, crooked smile. "He's old school. Don't take it personally." From the corner of the cafe, Miss Thornhill sipped her tea and pretended not to notice the scene unfolding, but her eyes flicked toward them more than once. By the time Wednesday and Tyler stepped out of the cafe, the rumor had already taken on a life of its own. Wednesday Addams is dating Tyler Galpin.